Jake always believed his neighborhood was a peaceful little corner of the world, friendly faces, kids riding bikes, and the sound of birds in the morning. At the heart of his happy home was Max, his loyal dog. Max wasn't just a pet. He was family, big-hearted, playful, and protective. Max was loved by almost everyone in the neighborhood. Almost at one sunny afternoon, Jake was mowing the lawn when he noticed Karen from the HOA coming down the street. Now, Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed queen of rules and regulations. Known for her sharp tongue and even sharper stare, Karen had earned the nickname HOA Karen among the locals. Max, curious as always, trotted up to Karen, tail wagging, hoping for a friendly sniff or a pat on the head. But Karen's reaction was anything but friendly. "Your dog is a problem, Jake," Karen said in that unmistakably cold tone. "I've had multiple complaints. Max is barking too much. It's disturbing the peace." Jake raised an eyebrow, trying to keep calm. "Max, barking? Come on. Karen, Max is a good dog. He barks sometimes, sure, but it's just normal dog behavior." Karen shook her head, stepping closer. "It's more than normal. You're violating the HOA's noise policy. If you don't control Max, you'll face fines." Jake glanced at Max, who sat obediently by his side, tongue lolling and eyes bright. "Max isn't a menace. He's part of this family, and I'm not about to lock him up because of your personal vendetta." Karen's lips curled into a smirk. "This isn't personal. It's about keeping this community perfect. And your dog isn't part of that vision." The words stung, but Jake bit back his reply before he could say more. Max let out a sharp bark, a warning sound that echoed in the quiet street. Karen narrowed her eyes. "See? There it is again. If you don't fix this, I'll have to take it higher." Jake felt a chill. Karen wasn't just threatening fines, she was ready for war. That night, Jake sat on his porch, Max resting his head on Jake's knee. He replayed the afternoon's confrontation over and over in his mind. Something about Karen's words didn't sit right. Why was she so obsessed with Max? The next morning, the mailbox held a crisp white envelope, the official HOA warning letter. "Dear Mr. Thompson," it began, "it has come to the board's attention that your dog, Max, has been causing disturbances that violate community guidelines. You are hereby instructed to keep Max indoors during all hours to avoid further action, including fines up to $500. Jake's hands tightened around the letter. This was more than a warning. It was a threat. But Jake wasn't alone. He called his friend Lisa, a longtime resident who had dealt with Karen's antics before. "Karen's always looking for a way to control people," Lisa said, her voice low but firm. "You've got to stand your ground. She's got an agenda. Determined." Jake posted a picture of Max on social media, along with a message, "Max is part of our family, and no HOA rule will change that." The post quickly got dozens of likes and supportive comments. Still, the tension grew. Jake noticed Karen watching from her porch, a smirk playing on her lips like a chess player ready to make her next move. Days later, Max barked at a stranger, walking past the house, nothing unusual. But Karen stormed over, eyes blazing. "Enough. This ends now," she snapped. "You'll regret letting this go on." Jake's jaw clenched. He could feel the war brewing. That night, as he and Max settled down, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's warning was just the beginning. This isn't over, he thought. Not by a long shot. The morning after receiving the official warning letter from the HOA, Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was no longer a casual disagreement with a neighbor. It was a full-blown battle. Max, oblivious to the tension, wagged his tail as he followed Jake around the yard, But Jake knew the peace they once had was slipping away. Jake sat down at his kitchen table and stared at the letter again. The language was cold, detached, violation, disturbance, fines. It didn't feel like a community looking out for one another. It felt like Karen and the HOA were gearing up to make his life miserable, trying to get some perspective. Jake called Lisa, his trusted friend and veteran of HOA battles herself. "Lisa, this letter. It's like a threat," Jake said. "I don't want to get into a war with the HOA, but I also won't lock Max inside all day." Lisa's voice was steady. "That's exactly what Karen wants, for you to back down. She's not just about rules, she's about control, and she's got a personal grudge against you." Jake frowned. "Why me? Why Max?" Lisa sighed. "You've been one of the few homeowners who actually stand up to her. Plus, Max barking, even if it's nothing, gives her ammunition. It's easier for her to justify this vendetta." Jake realized Lisa was right. Karen's issues with him ran deeper than he thought. That afternoon, as Jake was trimming the hedges, he overheard a conversation between Karen and two other HOA members. "We've got to make sure he complies," Karen said, voice low but firm. "If he caves, it sends a message. If not, well, we have ways." Jake's heart raced. What did she mean by ways? The next day, a small group of neighbors approached Jake while he was outside. Some offered words of encouragement. Others, with nervous glances, warned him to be careful. "I've seen Karen get nasty before," one neighbor said. "She won't stop until she breaks you." Jake's mind raced. This wasn't just about Max anymore. This was a fight for his home, his peace, and maybe even his sanity. That evening, Jake found another envelope slipped under his door. No return address, just a single typed sentence inside. "You'll regret this." A cold shiver ran down Jake's spine. This was no longer about barking dogs. It was personal intimidation. Max nudged Jake's hand, sensing his unease. Jake looked down at his dog and made a silent promise. "I won't let Karen win." Determined, Jake began researching HOA rules and local laws. He learned that while HOA letters have power, homeowners have rights too. Rights Karen might be ignoring. At the same time, Jake reached out to more neighbors, building a small network of support. Many had quietly dealt with Karen's strictness, but were afraid to speak up. Late one night, Jake sat scrolling through a community forum online when a message caught his eye. "Karen's not just about rules. She's got a personal score to settle. Watch your back." Jake's jaw tightened. The warnings were piling up, but so was his resolve. Days later, Karen showed up again at Jake's door. This time, she wasn't alone. Holding a clipboard and a smartphone, she smiled coldly. "We're increasing patrols and monitoring. Max stays inside or we escalate." Jake looked at Max, who gave a low, protective growl. "Karen," Jake said firmly, "Max is part of this family. I'm not going to let you bully us into silence." Karen's eyes flickered with annoyance. "You think this is bullying? It's enforcing the rules." Jake shook his head. "No, this is personal." Karen smiled, the kind of smile that promised. This was far from over. That night, Jake sat on his porch, staring into the darkness. Max rested his head on Jake's knee, a silent companion in the storm. Jake knew one thing. Karen's next move was coming, and he needed to be ready. The morning after Karen's latest visit, Jake stepped outside to find something new: a small security camera discreetly mounted on a tree. Near his backyard fence, the device blinked silently, watching Max's every move. Jake's jaw tightened. Karen had taken it a step further. This wasn't just about warnings anymore. It was surveillance, curious and cautious. Jake checked around and found more cameras hidden near his side gate, even peeking from the bushes at the corner of his porch. Whoever installed them had gone to great lengths. Later that day, Jake got a message from the HOA. Cameras installed for community safety. All footage will be reviewed regularly. Jake couldn't help but feel this was all about gathering evidence against Max. Is this legal? He wondered aloud to Lisa during their phone call. Lisa's voice was firm. HOA can install cameras on common property, but on your private property? That's sketchy. You might want to check local laws. But the bigger question is why the obsession. Jake was more determined than ever to protect Max and his family. Over the next few days, Karen sent Jake clips she claimed showed Max misbehaving, barking aggressively, running loose, disturbing the peace. Jake watched the footage, frowning. Something felt off. The clips were short, edited, and sometimes confusing. Max barking at a squirrel, or chasing a leaf blown by the wind. Nothing unusual for a dog, but the way Karen presented it made it seem like Max was a wild menace. One evening, Jake sat with the footage on his laptop, rewinding and replaying. Then, on a particular clip, he noticed a shadowy figure lurking just outside the frame, not Max. He zoomed in, eyes narrowing. Could it be Karen or someone else? Suddenly, Max let out a low growl behind him, breaking Jake's focus. The dog's ears were pinned back, eyes fixed on the window. Jake stood, peering out, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched crept over him. Determined to get to the bottom of this, Jake decided to confront Karen. The next day, he walked over to her house, camera in hand. Karen, I've seen the footage you're sharing, but there's something strange. Some clips don't tell the whole story. Karen's eyes narrowed. Jake, I'm just doing my job. If Max breaks the rules, you have to face the consequences. Jake held up his phone, showing the suspicious clips. Do you know who that is? Seems like someone's manipulating the footage. Karen's expression flickered, but quickly returned to her usual stern mask. Accusations won't get you anywhere. Jake sighed, realizing this wasn't going to be easy. That night, Jake installed his own camera, hidden where Karen's devices couldn't reach. If she was trying to twist the story, he'd catch it. A few days later, Jake got a notification, movement near the cameras. When he checked the footage, his jaw dropped. There was Karen herself, sneaking around his yard late at night, fiddling with one of the cameras. She was moving it to get a better angle, possibly to catch something to use against him. Jake shared the clip with a trusted neighbor, Maria, who immediately offered to help him gather more evidence. It's clear she's going too far, Maria said, shaking her head. This isn't about rules anymore. It's personal. With growing community support and his own recordings, Jake felt a shift starting. The scales might be tipping in his favor, but Karen wasn't done yet. That weekend, at a neighborhood block party, Jake noticed Karen whispering to a few neighbors, casting sideways glances at Max and Jake. Max, ever the loyal protector, stayed close to Jake's side. Sensing the tension in the air. Jake caught Karen's eye, and for a moment, they stared down like two opponents in a high-stakes game. Karen's smirk was a promise. The battle was far from over. The day of the HOA meeting arrived like a storm on the horizon. Jake stood outside the community center with Max by his side, nerves twisting in his stomach. The room inside was packed. Neighbors, board members, and, of course, Karen, sitting smugly at the head of the table. Jake's friends and several neighbors showed up, some nodding quietly in support, others watching with curiosity or suspicion. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The HOA president called the meeting to order, and Karen wasted no time launching into her case. Neighbors, she began, voice steady but sharp, We've all heard the complaints about the noise disturbances caused by Max. Despite warnings and attempts to resolve the issue, Mr. Thompson has refused to comply with our community guidelines. She clicked the remote, and a series of edited video clips played on the screen behind her. Max barking, running around the yard, chasing squirrels. The footage was carefully selected to paint Max as a menace. Jake felt his blood boil, but kept calm. When it was his turn, he stood and faced the crowd. Max is part of my family. Yes, he barks, he's a dog. But he's never been aggressive or disruptive in a way that harms anyone. Many neighbors have told me they enjoy seeing Max around. We've tried to cooperate with the HOA, but this feels personal. At that moment, Maria stepped forward. She was the local veterinarian, well respected in the community, and an unexpected ally. I've known Max for years, Maria said firmly. He's a friendly, well-behaved dog. I've never seen anything dangerous or excessive about his behavior. This seems like a misunderstanding, or worse, a personal attack. Several heads nodded in agreement. Murmurs of support rippled through the crowd. Karen's confident expression flickered. She quickly changed tactics. This is not personal. It's about maintaining peace and order. If we let this slide, what's next? Jake saw the frustration beginning to show behind Karen's eyes. Then, a neighbor Jake didn't expect, Mr. Jenkins, a longtime resident known for his outspoken nature, stood up. I have lived here over 20 years, Jenkins said, and I've seen Karen use the HOA to bully neighbors who don't toe her line. I think it's time we rethink how we handle these issues. The room erupted into whispers and nods. The HOA board called for a vote on whether to enforce the fine on Jake. The results were split, but thanks to the new voices speaking up, the fine was put on hold pending further review. Karen's face tightened, but she maintained her composure. Before the meeting ended, she shot Jake a glare that promised this wasn't the last he'd hear from her. Outside, Jake felt a rush of relief mixed with lingering tension. The battle had been won for now, but the war was far from over. That night, as Jake sat on his porch with Max, he thought about what had just happened. The unexpected support. The shaky ground under Karen's feet. It was a turning point. But deep down, Jake knew Karen wouldn't stop. She was too invested. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, an anonymous text message. You may have won this round, but Karen never forgets. Jake looked down at Max, who gave a reassuring woof, as if saying, We're ready. The neighborhood was unusually quiet that night, too quiet. Jake sat on his porch, Max by his side, both alert to every sound. The tension from the HOA meeting still lingered like a shadow, thick and heavy, but Jake didn't expect what was about to unfold. Shortly after midnight, a loud banging at Jake's door shattered the stillness. Startled, Jake grabbed his phone and cautiously opened the door. Standing there was Karen, looking disheveled, eyes wild, and voice shaking. Help, your dog attacked me, she yelled, clutching her arm as if hurt. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Max was calm, sitting obediently at his feet, tail wagging but cautious. What happened? Jake asked. Alarmed but skeptical. Karen didn't wait for an answer. She stormed inside, still complaining about a bite and demanding Jake control his dog. Jake knew Max better than anyone. There was no way Max had attacked her, not without a reason, and certainly not without warning. The next morning, police officers arrived at Jake's door. Word had spread quickly. The attack was the talk of the neighborhood. Some whispered sympathy for Karen. Others looked skeptical. Jake cooperated fully with the police, recounting Max's calm behavior and his own shock at Karen's claim. But the damage was done. Max was now under scrutiny, and Jake's reputation was on the line. Determined to prove Max's innocence, Jake started his own investigation. He talked to neighbors who had seen Karen that night. One elderly couple mentioned hearing voices raised, but no barking or signs of struggle. Jake's suspicion deepened. Something about Karen's story didn't add up. Then, a breakthrough. A neighbor's security camera caught Karen arriving at Jake's house that night, alone. But the footage also showed her moving suspiciously near the fence. Moments before making the attack claim, Jake shared the footage with Maria and a few close neighbors. The consensus was clear. Karen's story was falling apart. Just as Jake was about to confront Karen, he received an anonymous call. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." The voice warned, cold and threatening. Jake's pulse quickened. The stakes were higher than ever. Karen wasn't just fighting him. She was trying to intimidate him. But Jake refused to back down. He knew the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The days that followed were tense. The neighborhood was split, some fearing Karen's wrath, others rallying behind Jake and Max. One evening, Jake found a note on his car windshield. "Leave it alone, or else." Jake stared at the note, anger burning inside. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was personal and dangerous. Max nudged Jake's hand, sensing his owner's turmoil. Jake looked down at his dog, determination hardening. "We're not giving up. Not now," as Jake prepared to fight back harder. He knew one thing for certain: Karen's next move would be her most dangerous yet. Jake knew Karen's threats weren't empty, but he also knew that the truth was on his side, and it was time to prove it. After the unsettling notes and the suspicious attack claim, Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. He installed his own hidden cameras around his property, covering angles where Karen's devices couldn't reach. This time, he would catch everything. No more distorted clips, no more twisted stories. Days passed, and Jake's phone buzzed nonstop with messages from neighbors. Many had quietly suffered under Karen's harsh rule, but feared retaliation. Now, inspired by Jake's courage, they were ready to speak out. One afternoon, Maria came over with her laptop. "I've reviewed the footage you sent," she said, quietly. "There's enough here to expose Karen's lies and her vendettas." Jake nodded, heart pounding. Together, they compiled videos of Karen sneaking around his yard at odd hours, moving cameras to catch false evidence, and even talking behind Jake's back, spreading rumors. Jake also found proof that Karen had tried to use HOA meetings to silence neighbors who supported him. The patterns were clear. This was no community leader. This was a bully abusing her power. Using social media and community forums, Jake started sharing his evidence carefully, rallying support without escalating tensions. His posts got shared widely, sparking conversations and turning many against Karen's tactics. But Karen wasn't backing down. The next day, Jake received another anonymous message. "You think you've won? Think again. Watch your back." The atmosphere was tense. Karen's desperation was visible. She called an emergency HOA meeting, hoping to regain control. At the meeting, Jake presented his evidence calmly. Faces around the room shifted as clips played, showing Karen's covert actions and manipulations. Some neighbors gasped. Others looked embarrassed for not speaking up sooner. Karen tried to deny everything, her voice trembling as the weight of proof mounted. The HOA board looked increasingly uncomfortable. Jake felt the tide turning. For once, the community saw the real story. Then, just as it seemed Karen's reign might end, she pulled one last card, planting false evidence accusing Jake of violating other HOA rules. The room grew chaotic, neighbors arguing over who to believe. Jake remained calm. He knew the truth was his strongest weapon. With the help of Maria and a few brave neighbors, Jake requested a formal investigation. The board agreed reluctantly, realizing the situation had spiraled too far. Days later, the investigation uncovered Karen's false claims and manipulation. The HOA board voted unanimously to remove her from her position. Jake's victory was bittersweet. The fight had taken its toll, but finally, justice was in sight. That night, Jake sat on his porch, Max lying peacefully beside him. He thought about the road ahead, rebuilding trust, healing wounds, and restoring peace. But just as he relaxed, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've only made an enemy." Jake looked at Max, who wagged his tail, reassuringly. Together, they were ready for whatever came next. Jake thought the battle with Karen was finally turning in his favor. With her removed from the HOA board, he felt a flicker of relief. But Max, ever vigilant, seemed restless, as if sensing the fight wasn't quite over. It was a quiet morning when Jake noticed something strange. His mailbox was tampered with, and the lock on his garden shed was broken. Nothing was missing, but someone had clearly been snooping around. Jake's heart raced. Could Karen be behind this? The thought made his blood boil. Determined to protect his home, Jake set up a new camera focused on the shed. But this time, he let Max roam free in the backyard, trusting his dog's instincts. That evening, Jake reviewed the footage. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Max's ears perked up. The dog suddenly darted toward the shed, nose low to the ground, tail stiff. The camera caught movement, a shadowy figure approaching the shed, trying to slip inside. But before the person could enter, Max lunged, barking fiercely. The figure scrambled, dropping a small bundle, papers, and ran off into the darkness. Jake rushed outside, heart pounding. He picked up the bundle, hands trembling. Inside were documents, HOA records, emails, and letters, all revealing Karen's secret. Vendettas, personal attacks on neighbors, and misuse of HOA funds to push her agenda. The evidence was explosive. It showed Karen had been manipulating meetings, threatening homeowners, and using the HOA to settle personal scores. Jake knew this was the final proof needed to expose Karen fully. He immediately contacted the HOA board and shared the documents, along with the new footage of Karen's attempted break-in. The board called an emergency session. This time, there was no denying the facts. Karen was confronted with the evidence. Her usual confident mask cracked, frustration and anger bubbled to the surface. "You think this ends here?" Karen spat, her voice shaking. "I won't go down without a fight." But the board was resolute. They voted to expel Karen from the community and reported her actions to local authorities for further investigation. Neighbors who had kept quiet for years finally spoke up, thanking Jake and Max for their courage. Jake felt a surge of pride, but also exhaustion. One evening, as he and Max sat on the porch, a car slowed near his driveway. A familiar voice called out, "Jake, you did good," Maria said, stepping out. "But be careful. Karen's not the only one who holds grudges around here." Jake nodded, knowing the fight for peace in the neighborhood wasn't over yet. Max rested his head on Jake's lap, as if to say, "We've come far, but we stay ready." After Karen's expulsion, the neighborhood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. Jake felt the weight lift from his shoulders. Finally, a chance at peace for him and Max. The HOA board held a special meeting to rewrite the community rules, aiming to protect homeowners and their pets from future abuses of power. New policies ensured fair treatment and clear processes for complaints, designed to prevent another Karen from rising. Neighbors came together like never before, their shared experience forging a stronger, kinder community. Jake and Max became symbols of standing up for what's right. their story inspiring others to speak out. Jake spent quiet mornings on his porch, watching Max play with neighborhood kids, laughter filling the air once more. One afternoon, Jake received a surprise visit from a local news crew eager to share his story of resilience and community spirit. Jake, always humble, hoped their story would help others facing similar struggles. Life was settling into a new, hopeful rhythm. But just when Jake thought the saga was over, fate had one last twist. Late one evening, Jake noticed a figure standing at the edge of his yard. The silhouette was unfamiliar, cloaked in shadow. The stranger stepped forward, revealing a badge. An agent from the local authorities. Jake Thompson, the agent asked. "That's me." Jake replied cautiously. "We've been investigating Karen's activities beyond the HOA fraud, intimidation, even worse. Your evidence was crucial in our case." Jake's heart raced. The fight against Karen had sparked a larger investigation. One that would bring justice on a bigger scale. The agent smiled slightly. "Thanks to you and Max, a lot more will come to light. But be careful. There might be others who don't want this uncovered." Jake looked down at Max, who wagged his tail calmly. "We're ready," Jake said. As the agent left, Jake felt a mix of relief and resolve. This chapter might be ending, but the story, his story, was far from over. He turned to Max and laughed softly. "Guess we gave Karen's nose something to remember, huh?" Max barked happily, the loyal companion through every twist and turn. Final call to action. If you've followed Jake and Max's journey, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to never miss a story about standing up for what's right. Share this video with anyone who knows the power of loyalty, courage, and a dog's nose for justice. Because sometimes the smallest heroes make the biggest difference.